so we do have 1 5 decimals. Today's date is 10/12/20. Our objective is I'm learning to convert decimals to percents. And fractions or decimals are two ways to represent numbers. Remember, hit pause if you need to. Alright, to go from decimal to percents. Now we're all caught up. We got our 0.75. And to go from a decimal to a percent, we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So what would that be as a percent? You got 75%. So up here, decimals to percents, we move decimal 2 places to the right. Does anybody in here remember maybe a different way? You can do it multiple different ways. I like moving the decimal. This is my favorite. Does anyone remember another way that's maybe grade school? You can also multiply it by 100 because 0.0575 times 100 would also give you 75 because the percent's 100%. So you can times it by 100, but I prefer to just move the decimal 2 places to the right. So now for our examples, it just tells us to write each percent as a decimal. So, this one, now we're going to have us go backwards. So there we go, we'll go to pink. So if we're going to go backwards here, we're going to go from percent to decimal. Which way would I have to move the decimal for this one? To the left or go backwards? Oh, percent to decimal. Move 2 places to the left. So if we have 50% as our first example, do y'all remember where the decimal currently is for 50%? You guys always behind your 0 there. And now to go from percent to a decimal, we're going to move it 2 places to the left. So we're going to go 1, 2. So what is actually going to be in front of that decimal now? 0, so it's going to be 0.5. And you can put the 0 after it, but you don't have to. You can just leave it as 0.5. Well, the board says no. Why isn't the board saying no for it? There we go. So you don't have to show the 0 if you don't want to. You can. And you always double check yourself. I like this one because it's nice and easy. Is 50 cents 50% of a dollar? Yeah, because it's half a dollar. So just keep going. So for 2, if I'm given 31.2%, this one shows the decimal. So once again, the decimal's right there. How am I going to write it as a decimal? You got it. Move it 2 places, and it'll be 0.312. And now one last one, 3. We have 42.7%. Once again, it shows the decimal for this one. So if the decimal's here, and I move it 2 places, it's going to be what? You got it. Perfect. For this next set of examples, let me scoot this over just a little bit. We're going from a fraction here to a decimal. So it says write the fraction or mixed number as a decimal and then as a percent. So we actually have 2 steps. I have to take a fraction and write it as a decimal first. How do we do that? You got it. That fraction bar tells us to divide, so we got to divide it. So take a second right now. I'll pull up Desmos if you want to grab your calculator. Oh, yes. 5 divided by 16 gives us, hopefully you all hit the right buttons. 16. And it's 0.3125. So 0.3125. So that's the first step. We wrote it as a decimal. What else are we supposed to do? You got it right as a percent. That goes back to that first part where we talked about it's currently a decimal. Now which way do I move the decimal to go to a percent? You got two ways to the right. So it's going to be our, because we don't worry about the 0 anymore, we're just going to put 31.25. And then percent symbol. There we go. And this whole thing's our answer. We have the decimal and the percent. And I always like to pull this up and remind people, when you go from decimal to percent, the number gets bigger, whereas when you go from percent to decimal, the number gets smaller. So there's different ways to remember. If you can't remember left and right, just remember number gets smaller, number gets bigger. That'll be helpful. All right, our fifth example is a mixed number, 2 and 7/20. We know a couple of different methods for this one and a calculator. What can we do to get this one first as a decimal? You got it. We can write it as an improper fraction. So what is 2 times 20? 40. And now what do I do with that 40 and the 7? Add on. So it's 7 plus 40. 47 over 20. And now we're right back where we were. We know that fraction bar tells us to divide. You do get the 2.35 no matter how you put it in your calculator. If you go to a mixed number, if you remember, like it means and, means a plus sign there. So 2.35 is what we are as a decimal. So 2.35. Now we got the decimal. What next are we supposed to do? You got to turn it to a percent. So now that we're going to a percent, we see the decimal right there. I move it 2 places to the right. You got it. And what's it going to be as a percent? 235%. You got it. And those are both of our answers. We got our 2.35 and our 235%. There we go. Get rid of my little scratch work down there. All right, we have one last one. I want you all to try it on your own, and we'll come around and check to see how we're doing. So 6 will be 2/11. So example 6 is 2/11. Remember, first thing we got to do is decimal and then percent. See real quick, what's it going to be as a decimal?
0.18.
You got, so like whenever you put in the calculator, it gives you like 0.1818. It keeps repeating, right? So remember, some of you all did this, some of us may have forgotten, but if it keeps repeating 18, what can I do to my decimal here? You can put a bar over it, just like that's 0.18 repeating. Now to go to a percent, what is 0.18 as a percent?
18%.
18%. You got it. Awesome. So are we all good with these? All right. We have one next section here where it's to go from decimals to a fraction. So it says write each decimal as a fraction in reduced form. So we'll just say this one's 7. We have 0.375. So help me out. Anybody got any ideas? What can we do to go from a decimal to a fraction? Huh? You got it. You just type it in Desmos. So we'll go back to Desmos. We'll pull up our 0.375. Then what do I need to hit?
The blue.
You got it. Hit the blue button here and make sure I actually do it, and then convert to fraction button. And what is it as a fraction? 3/8. So the decimal as a fraction is 3/8. And now 8, we have 9.0032. Same thing, we just type it into Desmos, hit that fraction button. So how many zeros is that? 9.00, yeah, 2 of them. Thank you so much. 9.0032. Enter. We want to convert that to the fraction. Ooh, it's a big fraction. 5,627 over 625. I'm going to have to keep that handy so I can see it. So 5,627 over 625. There we go. Our next section, we have percentages. Now, this is actually a fraction bar, so don't think it's two different blanks. So we're actually going to see like where it says percent of a number. When we use percentages, we do a proportion, which means a fraction that equals a fraction. So we actually do a percent over, and then what's a complete perfect percent? What do you want on all tests? 100. So percent over 100, because all 100s are a whole. And then it equals whatever part of a whole compared to the whole number. So percentages are a percent over 100 and then a part over a whole. And if you can just remember this setup here, it really makes all these problems really easy because they're all going to be solved the exact same way. So real quick, before we move on, a couple of quick things to talk about. If it's a proportion and it's a fraction that equals a fraction, do you want to remember how we solve those? Pretend those were all numbers there. Pretend it was like 1/2 equals x over 50. What would you do? A fraction that equals a fraction. I know it's all the way back to Algebra 1, freshman year, it's been a long time. What would we do? Solve for x. Cross multiply. So that's all we got to do for these is cross multiply. So just make yourself that note. If you've forgotten what that looks like, no big deal. We'll see it here in just a second in action. But we cross multiply to solve these because it's a fraction that equals a fraction. Now one more note I want you to make to just make life easier for us is when we see a question like this that says what is 4.5% of a number? So if it's a percent of a number, it's going to go up here to your part because that means 8,000 is the whole. Now another question may ask you, you know, this number is 50% of what number? So if it says of what number, that means it's your whole. It's going to go to the bottom. So a little bit of a heads up there for you to put stuff. So for our very first example, on your all's end, so this is what, example 9 for us? Make sure I've not lost my numbers. Go ahead and put percent over 100 equals part over whole. That way we can see how it looks here with our problem. So 4.5 is our percent, so where should it go? Over the 100. So 4.5 over 100 equals. Now it says of 8,000. So is 8,000 part of a number or is it the whole number?
Whole number.
It's the whole number. So we're going to put that 8,000 on the bottom here, which means do I know what the part is? No, so what do I use up there? X, you got it. So now I have it all set up. What do I do to solve for x? We got cross multiply. So we're going to do 100 times x and get 100x. I'm going to need some assistance here. We'll do 4.5 times 8,000. 36,000, thank you. Alright. Okay, so now what do we do to solve for x? You got divisor being multiplied, so you divide both sides by 100. Do you want to know the cool thing about when you divide a really big number by 100? Takes away the zeros, so what's x going to be?
36.
You got, what's this be, 360? You can put in your calculator. So there we go. So 4.5% of 8,000 is 360. So example 10, if I scoot that up, it says what percent sorry, what is 335% of 520? So once again, you have your percent over 100 equals your part over your whole. So what is my percent? You've got 335%, so that goes over 100. So 335 over 100. Now, is your 520 part of a number, or is it the whole number? Whole number. You guys, so it's going to go on the bottom. So which means it's going to go on top. X. Awesome. Oh, hopefully you don't tilt the whole problem. There we go. X. I did it again. X. There we go. And now we're right back to where we were. We got to cross multiply. So what's 100 times X? 100X. What's 335 times 520? Ooh, that's a big number.
1,074.
So
174.
17, I'm sorry. So 174, 200. Thank you. There we go. So now what do we do? You got divide both sides by 100. Cool thing happens again where this is a really big number. You can divide it by 100. You can knock off the zeros. So it'd be 1,742. There we go. 11. So once again, it's going to be a percent over 100 equals part over whole. That's how all these are going to be set up. It says the number 50 is what percent of 400? So this time, what were we asked to find? What percent? You got it. So usually I put a number above my 100, but what will I do this time? You got it. What can I use if I don't know the percent? You can still use X if you want to. You can switch it up and maybe use P if you want to for percent. Over 100, because we don't know what that's going to be. So X over 100 equals, what's our part? 50. And what's our whole? 400. You got it. And now we're right back to where we cross multiply. I always start with my variable first. Oh no, just because I like to do that. So X times 400 is what? 400X. Alright, 100 times 50. 5,000. Add on an extra 0. Divide both sides by 400. And X will equal what?
500. Wait, no.
Anybody try it? Because if we knock off the zeros, 50 divided by 4, 12.5. Yeah, thank you. I knew we should end up with the decimal. I just couldn't remember what type of decimal we should end up with. There we go. So 50 divided by 4 gives us 12.5. And that's 12.5 what? Percent. You got it. We got to go back to that problem. It's 12.5%. So throw on a percent sign at the end of it. We're all good. So now this one was set up differently. So example 12. Once again, it's percent over 100 equals part over whole. And this time we were asked the number 17 is what percent of 93. So once again, what were we asked to find? The percent. So what should I use for above 100? X over 100, you got it. And now, is 17 a part or a whole? Part, you got it. And now 93 is our whole. Awesome. We're back to where we were we cross multiply. X times 93 gives, yep, awesome, 93x. 100 times 17, 1700. Divide both sides by 93. And what is 1700 divided by 93? 15, 18.27, 275, 9. There we go. And now, like last time, your 18.279 is what? A percent. So we got to throw that percent symbol behind it, and we're all good. Alright, now one last one. This one's my favorite one. So remember, it's always going to be your percent over 100 equals the part over a whole. So for this one, we're asked to find the number 140 is 4%, so it's actually written like 4% there, of what number? So, real quick, what's going to be over my 100? 4, because we got 4% over 100. Now, I'm going to reread it. You got to think about this part. It says, the number 140 is 4% of what number? So is 140 your part or your whole?
Part.
It's your part. You got it. So 140 goes on top, which means we're looking for what number? We're looking for the extra, the whole number. So anytime it says like of what number, it will be on the bottom. And now we cross multiply, so 4 times x. You got it. And now 100 times 140, 14,000. Last step, divide both sides by 4, and x will equal thank you. 3,500. Yeah, there we go, because 140 is 4%. 4% is a very low percentage. That would work. Perfect. Alright guys, so that finishes up with our notes. You guys have any questions? There we go.